Welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We are at the start of what will almost certainly be a huge week for both MMA and gaming, with UFC 282 and the Game Awards both happening this week. But first, Scott, we got to look backwards before we look forwards. How about that main event in Orlando?
That was a fun one. I don't think I feel like the prisoner of the moment kind of thing was going on there, where everyone's like, "Oh, this is fight of the year," and it's like, you forgot about all the other fights of the year.
I mean, I could name three better fights, like more entertaining fights anyway, off the top of my head. You have Prochazka Teixeira, which I think is the front runner,
which is a legitimate all timer.
Yes, you have Hamzat versus Gilbert Burns, which is another great fight. And then you have Poirier and Chandler. Yeah. I think those are three fights that happened this year that are better than Wonderboy versus Holland. But I would put Wonderboy Holland in the top five. So like, it's not like people are completely out of line saying this is one of the best fights of the year.
Sure, yeah. I don't know where I would put it, but I mean, the point I'm trying to make isn't that it wasn't a good fight, but more that everybody just jumped. It's part of the UFC's hype model, right? Like, don't worry about what happened a few weeks ago or a couple days ago. It's like, we're here. This is what's awesome. Can't wait till the next one.
Yeah, the next fight is always the biggest fight in company history.
It's true. So I think that's kind of where I come from, where I have to like push back at it. But having said that, super fun fight. I had a great time watching it. I mean, Kevin Holland was definitely there for the striking battle, even when he got these nice grappling positions. He's like, I'm just going to stand up.
Yeah, and I very much appreciated that, because I was like, oh no, he's has him down, and then he just stood up, and I'm like, thank you, Kevin Holland.
From an entertainment standpoint, super great. I think that's the type of thing that actually will ingratiate himself to the UFC in their perverse way of like, we don't really want you to fight smart. We just want you to fight fun.
Look at the Contender Series.
The fans are looking for. Yeah, pretty much. But if I'm his coaches, I'm like, why am I coaching this guy?
Well, they even told him in between rounds, what was it, in between the second and third, or in between the third and fourth, where he's like, make it an MMA fight.
Yeah.
Like, take him down, do something, like, because they know
they're like just like pleading with him, like, hey man, don't forget you can do this. There's all these things that you're supposed to. And he's like, no, I'm good. But then late in the fourth round, before the stoppage, obviously was after the round, corner stopped it. You saw him be like, well, maybe I'll make this a grappling now, and it just like wasn't working, so it was too late.
Well, that's the thing, is that like Kevin Holland is a very good striker, and he has some obvious power. Like, he hurt Wonderboy in that first round pretty badly.
Yeah, however, it was a good round for him.
Over a sustained, potentially 5-round fight, if you let Stephen Thompson just operate at the range he's comfortable in, he's as good as pretty much any striker in the UFC.
You're not wrong, but also, I mean, that wasn't even entirely how he fought. He brought the fight in a lot of ways. He didn't just kind of keep it at that kicking range. He's going in and out. He was really going for some like up close and personal punches as well.
Mm-hmm.
You saw some dimension from Wonderboy's striking that you don't always see when it's like, okay, this is fighting his fight. He was fighting. I think he was also fighting Kevin Holland's fight. He was just better at it as the fight went on.
Well, it's hard because
he was able to mix it up more. He's obviously someone who went from the background he had as a competitive kickboxer, basically grew up in a karate gym. He's just going to be better in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an absolute just sniper when it comes to like his accuracy, his ability to just pull kicks out of nowhere. Like,
it was the kicks and the punches. They were like lasers, guided missiles that were just going to wherever they needed to go, whether it was the body or the head.
I think it was after one of the rounds. He was talking to his corner, and Kevin Holland's like, "This MFer's fast."
Yeah, I think it was before the third round.
Yeah, I mean, and it showed, because like once the second round started rolling, it was just downhill for Wonderboy from there on out. Like, how did you score that final round, the fourth and final round, where it was just one-way traffic?
That's a 10-8.
10-8?
Yeah, it felt like a 10-8 to me. It felt like a good one. We talked about that on my show, my judging show, today as well. And it was, it felt like a pretty strong 10-8. It wasn't unanimous, but I feel like a part of that, without going too deep into it, is the fact that the definitions of 10-8s and 9s have been so screwed up for the judges, and it's not their fault. It's more like above them for the last like almost 2 years now. So like the same judge that gave a 10-9 in that round was the only judge who gave a 10-8 earlier in another round on the prelims.
Okay.
So it was almost like he kind of, and I don't know this, but I'm just going to kind of read the tea leaves here. It looked like he almost like overcorrected from giving too much of a 10-8 to kind of going the other way.
Okay, so I am looking at the definition of a 10-7.
Oh, well, you can say what you want about a 10-7, and then I'll tell you what
they're not going to give it, but like I think it was closer to a 10-7 than a 10-9. I think it's still a 10-8, but I think that 10-9 I think is not a reasonable scorecard for that round.
I feel okay with what you're saying there. But again, I think a lot of it is I don't necessarily even fault the judge, because it's just they had a good thing going with the way they were giving out the 8s for, several years after they'd redefined it in the criteria, and they had years to hone it and everything like that. And now, ever since, and the round you always go back to, for anybody curious, is the 5th round of Jan Blachowicz against Israel Adesanya here, because 2 judges gave that a 10-8, and a lot of people probably wouldn't say that's a 10-8, and Dana went bonkers about how judges are giving out too much, and basically after that, you had this internal commission-driven thing, especially in Nevada, where it was like, all right, we got to push it back. We can't. You can really only give it out if there's high damage. So it kind of messed with everybody's equilibrium, and now not only do we see them less frequently, we see judges agreeing less because of this whole thing. So I'm sympathetic to the judges in this sense, and also it doesn't really matter if it gave a 9, 8, or a 7 in this round, because even if they went out for the 5th round, Kevin Holland needed a 10-8 to just draw.
Yeah.
Minimum if it was a 10-9, and then it would be 10-7. So it's not really that important in the grand scheme when we look at that particular. You want to get it right, of course, but yeah, there's my little judging rant, I guess.
Well, in that case, I had that 4th round 10-9 Holland. No, it was obviously a masterclass put on by Stephen Thompson. That was just the best we've seen of him, maybe ever, but in a long time, certainly.
Certainly in a long time. I mean, I don't want to jump to ever, but he looked really great.
That's just the best performance I can remember since maybe his first Woodley fight.
I would say it's definitely his best he's looked since he left, like since he had those 2 title fights where he unfortunately wasn't able to get the win either time.
Yeah, but that first one was certainly a more entertaining fight than the second one.
But he even looked pretty good last year against Jeff Neal.
Yeah, he did. You're right.
This is I think he was better here. He was even more aggressive, and he was able to force a stoppage, corner stoppage. But yeah, I mean, he pretty much, if you don't put him against somebody who just wants to grapple and they're like somewhat willing to engage, like you're gonna usually have a pretty good Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight.
That's what he said in his post-fight press conference. Did you hear
that? Right? I actually, no, to be perfectly honest, I don't know what he said.
He was like, hey, if you guys want, like talking to the UFC, he was like, hey, if you guys want more fights like this, match me against a striker.
Yeah. No, I think he, what was it? They were talking about the idea of him against, this is like over the summer, they were talking about the idea of him against Shavkat Rakhmonov.
No.
Who obviously is a multi-talented mixed martial artist on the come up, who I think has championship level potential.
He might be the future of this division, very much so.
He really might be, but is much more inclined to get the fight to the ground against even, people who can grapple much more, let's say, depth than Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And yeah, he's like, no, he declined the fight pretty much, or said he wasn't that interested in the fight. It's like, I get it. Like, why would you have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? Why would you use him wrong?
Yeah. I think that, he is poised that if the UFC wanted to, and if they matched him correctly, they could get him to a title shot if they gave him hey, one more fight, you got to win. 'Cause he's ranked number 6 right now. If they said, all right, we're going to give you another striker in the top, I don't know who even would be ranked in the top 6 of the welterweight division. That's mostly a striker. There's a lot of wrestlers in the top of the welterweight division. And then we're poised for a Leon Edwards matchup if Leon's still champion at that point. So I'm just saying, if the UFC wanted to.
What I would say to that is, yeah, I get what you're saying, But what I would say to that is I would not be okay with him getting a title shot without having to face any sort of grappler on the way there. I think he's going to have to be one of them to just deserve the shot, at least in my mind. And I don't know how much they're interested in pushing a 40-year-old potential champion. I don't think that's necessarily what they're chasing to do with their championship outlook here.
I mean, all I'm saying is the champion at the current time is perhaps the best matchup that Stephen Thompson would ever get in a championship at welterweight.
Probably fair. That's probably fair to say.
Like, I don't care if it's Kamaru Usman, if it's Colby Covington, unless Jorge Masvidal gets the next Leon Edwards matchup and then he somehow wins, which I would not pick him to. But if he somehow won against Leon Edwards, and then maybe it's a better matchup for Stephen Thompson. But I don't think that that's going to happen.
Honestly, what I want from Stephen Wonderboy Thompson next is I want Michel Pereira. I feel like that's going to be a fun fight. That's one that I think Wonderboy has talked about as like he thought would be a fun one too. So you can put that one together. It's not necessarily a step forward for Wonderboy, but I don't know how much I'm sure he cares, but I don't think he's like dead set, got to get the title. I think he just wants to have fights that are fun. I think he wants to enjoy his time in the cage.
Oh, so, no. I just looked at the top 5 UFC welterweight rankings. Mm-hmm. Not a pure striker among them. We got Kamaru, we got Colby, we got Hamzat, we got Bilal, and we've got Gilbert.
And he already lost to 2 of them, so.
Yeah, so that's not a great stretch for him if he's trying to.
That's what I'm saying. Like, take a fight with someone behind him who's actually entertaining and fun. If he's willing to take a fight with Michel Pereira, who's behind him in the rankings, I think that's a win for us anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just don't. I mean, unless Stephen Thompson, because he was talking like, I think that I could do another like run at the title, which of course a lot of UFC fighters think that in the twilight of their career.
Sure,
but if he can move past that and just be like, I just want to be in like the fun fight phase of my career, then yes, Michel Pereira is the top 15 matchup that he should take. Currently
my
ranked
guess
14.
is probably somewhere in a little of both there. Like it's like, yeah, he'd like to get there, but also he doesn't necessarily want to fight the grapplers that are in his way. So he'd probably be much more willing to let's at the very least get a couple wins under his belt of the variety he's looking for. And then if he's got a little momentum, it's like, okay, maybe you test yourself up there, you know? I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing at his mindset there. I don't know, of course, but so this fight, obviously we had a good time with it. I believe we both rated it a 4 out of 5 on our interest.
I think so.
Does that sound right? Would you say that it fared well against our expectations, maybe even better?
I would say it was better. Like if we were grading in hindsight, I'd probably say a 4.5. Maybe even a 5 in terms of like entertainment value.
Yeah, you know what? I think we can put it at a 5. Why can't we put it at a 5?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best fights of the year. Top 5, I would say.
If you're a top 5 fight of the year and we can't give it a 5-star, like, come on. What's wrong with the rating here?
Scott, you make a damn good point. 5 it is.
I love it. What about the rest of the card, though? I mean, the last 7 fights on the card were finishes.
Also, speaking of finishes, before we move on from the main event, I think this is Stephen Thompson's first finish in 6 years. It's
been a hot minute, yeah. Because I interviewed him last week.
Tapology.
And I was looking at his record, and I was like, oh yeah, decision. Yeah, he's often. I don't want to say he's point fighting. I don't know that that's necessarily what it is, but the way he fights tends to be a certain way that isn't always going to push for the finish. And even here, like, it's not like the referee had to pull him off him. His corner decided, okay, that's enough. And how often do we get corner stoppages? This is a very rare thing.
Yeah, because Kevin Holland, I don't think, was going down. Like, he was hit with everything Wonderboy had, and he was still standing, aside from when he took one to the groin.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess who Stephen Thompson's last finish was, or did you bring up the page?
I already have it. So
okay, so it's Johnny Hendricks in 2016.
Johnny Hendricks, yep. Which is pre-championship days. He was not fighting for the title at that point. He was still on the rise in the UFC.
So, yeah, it was great.
But do you remember his fight against Jake Ellenberger? That was a finish as well right before that?
I don't know.
Dude, that's a wild fight. It's only 4.5 minutes, basically, but go watch that if you can. Go find it. Do you Fight Pass?
No. That was one of the things that I trimmed when there was like that HBO Max.
No, I get it.
Like another one that I was just like, I have like 17 subscriptions and I use like Netflix and Disney Plus and that's about it.
By the way, he has finished. He finished on the come up to the championship. He finished future champion Robert Whittaker.
Yeah.
And former champion Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, that's a good run right there. And then he had a very good fight with Tyron Woodley that first time.
Yeah.
Who, at that point in time, a lot of people were like, this guy might be something special. I mean, I still think Tyron Woodley was one of the best welterweights ever. Obviously, the end of his career went very poorly. But I think he's top 4, would you say? Top 4 welterweights in UFC history? It's like GSP and Kamaru are 1 and 2. Does Tyron go 3 or does he go 4?
It's very tricky.
I mean, I guess he
GSP
could go
and
4
Hughes are the ones who are up
there.
there.
That's true. I forgot about Hughes.
Those are 1 and 2. And then basically it comes down to Usman, I think, probably is 3. And then I think the conversation then dips down because there's like levels to it, right? I think GSP is so high up there. He's obviously stratospheric. I think Matt Hughes is very far ahead of everybody else, but Usman at least was starting to make it closer, and he still has time to do that as far as building a legacy. And then it dips down. We've got the likes of Robbie Lawler is in there, the Tyron Woodley, even someone like Pat Miletich from way back has to at least get a little bit of respect on his name in terms of his fighting career. We don't have to go into the things outside of fighting.
No.
That's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, it's definitely he's in the mix there, like Dana would say, right? He's in the mix.
And you know who I want to segue to, because we're talking about guys with just phenomenal resumes. This co-main event, Rafael dos Anjos defeating Brian Barberena by submission in the second round. Rafael dos Anjos has just fought everybody. Like, if you look at his Tapology page, it's just like basically a who's who. It's a strong ass resume. Like, the guys he loses to are the most legit there are, and he beats like some of the best fighters in the division as well. Like, his losses are literally like Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, and Michael Chiesa, and his wins are just like Robbie Lawler, Paul Felder, Renato Moicano, who Moicano's shown a lot of highs lately in his fighting. I mean,
forget that doesn't even register with all the other names he's got.
Donald Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz.
He has an amazing
Benson
resume.
Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait,
I thought was funny about this one.
Never mind, not a good resume. He lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, but a loser. No, what I thought was funny about this card in particular was, Rafael dos Anjos, obviously he wins in the co-main in the year of our Lord 2022. It was 12 years ago that he lost by a third round stoppage. He broke his jaw against Clay Guida, who also fought on the prelims.
Yeah.
12 years ago.
Holy crap.
Clay Guida, of course, was in a retirement fight, but it wasn't his retirement. It was somebody else's retirement. Scott Holtzman has apparently decided to hang him up. And it's just like, oh yeah, Clay Guida, he's in that retirement fight. Oh, he's retiring? No, it's the other guy.
Yeah, I also...
Guy ain't going anywhere.
I also thought that was hilarious, that I was like, oh, it's a retirement fight. And then I was like, oh, it's Holtzman's retirement, not Clay Guida, who is just going to fight until he's 53.
But back to your point about RDA, I mean, he is absolutely an incredible fighter. I think he can still hang at both 155 and 170. I don't think he's going to be breaking into that championship caliber anymore. I think there's a certain ceiling that he is at this point in both weight classes, but I'm glad that he's now choosing to compete at 170 pounds again, because if he's not going to get to that championship, don't suck your body out. Like, definitely go easy on yourself.
You know who I would like to see him fight? And this is kind of breaking into that championship window, but the very, very bottom of it, I would say, because RDA is ranked number 7 in the lightweight division currently. I would not mind seeing him fight Michael Chandler.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going down again. I think he's done at 55.
That's probably fair, but at the same time, that sounds like a fun fight.
I want him to get the fight he asked for. I think him versus Conor McGregor, it's a fight that has history. It's not just a random fight.
Trust me, I would love that too. I just don't think it's going to happen. I honestly think Conor is going to fight Michael Chandler. That's probably what's going to happen. If you had to guess me like what I want to happen and what's going to happen, especially when it comes to Conor McGregor and Nintendo. Those are the two things where it's like, here's what I want to happen. here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because like all the BS aside for Conor outside of the cage, I still enjoy watching him fight. Whenever he fights, It has a big fight feel, like whether it's Dustin Poirier, whether it's Cowboy Cerrone, and it lasts like 16 seconds or whatever. It's always a big fight feel. They bring out all the promotional engines that they start revving, and it's always fun to see that happen.
Sure.
I wish I could just look past all the other BS that's happening outside the cage, but regardless of that, when they book a Conor McGregor fight, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun night. I will watch this fight and I'll be excited about it.
You're not wrong.
But that's the thing, is it's so like, there's no such thing as like, here's what the UFC should do, because that goes out the window. It's whatever is going to be like the easiest sell for them, like, or
Sure.
whatever fits into their promotional materials. And I think that Michael Chandler at 170 is the most likely outcome. However, what I most want, it would probably be RDA, because like you said, it has that history. They were supposed to fight. They had the press conference that they already did, and it was a pretty fun one. And like, I think RDA has put in the hours. I mean, he just passed Frankie Edgar for most time in the octagon, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So it's like, yeah, that would be incredible to see RDA get kind of like the fight that he's been wanting for all these years. And I think he beats Conor McGregor at this stage, especially.
One would have to think, I mean, just for sheer activity, we don't even know what Conor is against, this caliber of opponent at this stage in his career. I mean, he fared well against Dustin Poirier. It's not like he's a bum. He wasn't going to win either of those fights, if you ask me, but he was definitely in there with someone who I still look at as one of the best lightweights on the planet. That's something. That
For
means
sure.
something, But I don't know. I mean, it's different when you get in there. He had a debilitating injury. He's now added all this girth and mass to his frame, and I have to think that that's going to negatively affect him, if anything, because I think one of the biggest things about Conor was that he was fast. That his hand speed was incredible. I don't think just adding a bunch of mass is going to help him. I think it's going to slow him down. I think his punches are going to be much easier to see. He's not going to have that mobility. Look, I could be wrong about this, but this is how I'm reading it. And I don't think it's going to help him. I think he's making a mistake getting all this, however he managed to get swole. If it was through means that just so happened to coincide with that he needed better recovery methods. So he stayed out of the USADA pool.
Yeah, weird how that worked out for the sport's
amazing,
biggest star.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think he's doing good. I don't think he's making good career choices. I think he's doing whatever he wants to do, and I hope he feels good about himself. He certainly seems to, but yeah, I don't think it's going to help him.
I think that clearly he is done at lightweight for now. He's
I
not making 155 with
again.
all this. It's so wild to think he used to fight at 145 at this point.
Well, even then it was kind of weird, but
even then he was skeletal when he would get on the scale sometimes.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, like he might have to cut pretty significantly to get down to 170 with how much muscle mass he has put on.
I imagine he would get there fine, but I mean, it's not negligible, I guess. But look, Wonder Boy said he walks around like between fights at 100 and 195 pounds, right? That's still 25 pounds above the limit. Wonder Boy's a bigger person than Conor is. He doesn't have as much muscle mass now, but like, I imagine when he gets in there and he's doing much more cardio and he's like really fight training, it'll shave down more.
Oh, for sure.
I wouldn't really worry about that. He probably will be like a totally normal sized welterweight.
We'll see. But
anyway, I mean, we don't have to go deep on Conor, I guess. We've probably gone too deep.
No, but
Conor
I do want
for this one.
I would love RDA to get that fight that he called for, which was Conor McGregor. I think that would be a great, I don't know what the best word is, because it's not like he's like retiring or anything, but it would be a great like pinnacle of his career outside of winning that championship. Would be like, all right,
it gets him his flowers.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say here.
That I think he has. I don't know if it's eluded him. I think he does have the respect, especially from his fellow fighters. I think they really respect him, and I think to a degree, fans respect him as well, because he has been in this title picture, or maybe not title picture, but he's been one of the guys at 155 and 170 for a very long time. several generations of, incoming fans have understood where RDA was. And, I think people respect it.
I think you could say the same thing about Dustin Poirier prior to those McGregor fights, the 2 and 3, where people a lot of fans respected him. They thought he was a great fighter, thought he was one of the best lightweights out there. And a lot of fighters respected him. And he seems like an overall good guy. But he got so much more mainstream attention after he fought Conor McGregor.
That's of course.
That's what I'm saying. I want
most
for
people
RDA.
aren't going to even know who he is whatsoever. And now, they do. Yeah. There were obviously a ton of fights on this. And granted,
yes.
he RDA had a good win over Barberena. Barberena isn't necessarily a top welterweight. I think they kind of overhyped him into coming into this fight. He's a solid fighter, but he's not like a contender by any stretch. So I think RDA did what he was meant to do against him. There were some other fun fights. I thought, for me, the most standout performance, the biggest, I would say the one who gained the most from this weekend, I'm going to say it was Roman Dolidze.
Yeah, that was a pretty solid win just from start to finish.
Big win over Jack Hermansson. He was the underdog coming into it. I saw the odds. They seemed out of whack with, I thought it was much closer of a fight. I like Jack Hermansson. I don't know who I would have picked to win necessarily, but I had a healthy respect for Roman Dolidze. I think he's really going places. Mm-hmm. And I think now we've seen that.
He's from Georgia, right?
Republic of Georgia, correct.
Yeah, so
not like Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Yeah, he's not from Atlanta.
No, negative.
Stone Mountain, where'd you pull that one?
I've been to Stone Mountain.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's
my
like
cousins.
not the...
My cousin took me there one time because they live in Georgia.
It's not even in the top 3 cities in Georgia that I would have pulled.
Atlanta's a city, right? You go there and it's still a city. You go to Stone Mountain is Georgia.
But Dolidze, I think that he has a pretty high ceiling in this middleweight division.
Mm-hmm.
He could obviously, he took out one of the perennial top 10-ish middleweights with Jack Hermansson.
He's almost like a gatekeeper to that. Okay, you're someone who can get somewhere now.
Yeah, Jack Hermansson was ranked 8th, and I think that's the lowest he's been ranked in a long time.
Yeah,
he's been kind of
exactly,
in that.
But yeah, he's kind of in that range. I think we've seen the best of Jack Hermansson now, and he's kind of just, I think he can still hang there. But granted, he's a gatekeeper. Unfortunately, is what he's become, and I think what we saw is Roman Dolidze smashed through the gate in a very calf-crushing way.
Yeah. Oh, that was so brutal to watch.
It was disgusting.
Yeah, it sucks that Jack Hermansson just never could get to that championship level there. But now we have the next wave is coming. The Roman Dolidzes, the Andre Muniz, the Nasruddin Imavovs are coming, and it's some of these more recognizable names near the top are going to start getting flushed down because of this new blood that's coming. And some of these guys are straight up killers. We saw that with Dolidze this past weekend where, oh my God, I was feeling so awful for his leg, Hermansson's calf in that situation. And to get ground and pounded into a finish from that position with his leg trapped. And obviously, I can't even imagine how bad that must have hurt.
I mean, a calf slicer is not fun in general. Mm-hmm. So calf compressor, it is terrible.
I actually talked about the calf slicer with DJ one time when we were playing EA Sports UFC. We were talking about calf slicers, and he was like, "Yeah, those suck."
Yeah, they do. They do suck. I can speak to that as well. I would say that Roman Dolidze gained the most from this weekend, but I would put a close second at Sergey Pavlovich.
Oh yeah, that was a huge win.
Monster win. He destroyed Tai Tuivasa's face in 54 seconds.
Tai Tuivasa, I feel like up to this point, if you told me that you could have taken a baseball bat to his head and he'd be okay, I would have believed you. But Sergey Pavlovich just must hit like a dump truck. Because you think about the hardest hitters at heavyweight. You think Francis Ngannou, you think Derek Lewis. Tai Tuivasa was kind of entering that conversation. Sergey Pavlovich just looks like he must he must be one of the hardest hitters in the UFC heavyweight division.
He's a thick dude too, and not only that, like the way he fought, the way he engaged with Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasa's all wild, right? You can see him; he's like spinning around, and he's like hoping to like wing something at some point. Pavlovich is sitting there like cold-blooded, just staying composed and launching the punches at just the right times. And some of these shots, they don't even look like they're just like smashing him. It's just, it almost looks like it grazes Tuivasa, but he hits so hard it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would not want to get punched by Sergey Pavlovich.
I don't want to get punched by anyone, to be fair. But I would
especially
I would put Sergey Pavlovich low on my list of guys who I would allow to do that to me.
Like, I want to hear what Tai Tuivasa says, because like he's been in there with Cyril Gane, he's been in there with Derek Lewis, he's taken some of their best shots. I want to hear where Pavlovich ranks in terms of the hardest hitters that he's faced, because like it was like when Justin Gaethje was talking about Charles Oliveira, and he was like, yeah, when Charles Oliveira hit me, it felt like unlike anything I've felt before. He said he like felt like he was licking a battery, I think was like the way Justin Gaethje. And when Justin Gaethje says that, I'm like, oh, well, he's been hit by a lot of guys a lot of times.
To be fair, you've said this several times now. Oh, they've been hit by this. I've been hit by this. Because the more you get hit, the easier it is to feel it. So it does make some logical sense that would happen to me. But having said that, I mean, Pavlovich in particular, you can just tell this guy is kind of naturally. He has a natural power to him. He's a thick guy, muscularly. He's just kind of built like a barrel. Mm-hmm. And I think he's somebody who could give major problems, even to Francis Ngannou, if he was to get to that point.
I just want to see him fight like one of the top heavyweights. However,
I mean, he did. Tai Tuivasa is one of the top heavyweights.
But like, do you think Curtis Blades is next for him? Because Stipe apparently just doesn't fight anybody anymore, and Francis is hurt. Do we do Pavlovich versus Gane? Do we do Pavlovich versus Curtis Blades?
There's no way to figure out what the heck they're going to do with heavyweight, because even Dana can't figure out what they're going to do between Francis's contract, between John Jones, between again, you mentioned Stipe Miocic. It doesn't look like Stipe Miocic interests himself as an active fighter right now. I feel like what he's doing is kind of sitting around being like, all right, if they give me an offer I like, I'll come back.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that he has a career
happy
like
with
that.
Life the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously a full-time firefighter, and that's an awesome career that he has. And I'm glad that
he made good money.
Yeah. He made great money as a champion, hopefully. And you know, he was the longest reigning UFC heavyweight champion, and I hope that gave him a lot of money, and that's the reason he's sitting out, not because
I feel like that's what it is. I think he's totally comfortable with life. He's probably made more money than he ever anticipated he would when he started doing this, and it's basically just allowed him to supplement his life in other ways. He's got kind of these, marketing things going, like he, does ads and things like that you've seen, and whatever he can do to not. It seems like he's trying to fight when he feels like he's getting his value, getting his worth paid. Hey, good for him. I think that's the right way to go. So yeah, it's hard to match make is kind of what I'm getting through here at welterweight or at heavyweight, because what are they going to do? Like, I mean, it sounded like they might do John Jones versus Curtis Blades if they can't put together John Jones against Francis Ngannou. So there's just too many contingencies.
Now,
but obviously Pavlovich has earned a top fight next.
I would love Pavlovich versus Gane.
That'd be great. I think
that would be a fun fight. I think
it'd be a good test for Pavlovich too, because we don't like. Obviously, it's easy to get excited about this performance, and the reason I speak to him as I think he could beat anybody is because when you have the touch of God, that power, it really is an equalizer in just about any matchup.
I mean, look at the current champion.
Yeah, absolutely, it's the same thing.
But with Tai Tuivasa, because obviously he's a very big name, suffering a pretty catastrophic loss here in the first round, the first minute of the first round. What is the role that he plays in this division? Does he kind of fall into Derek Lewis's old role, where it's like he just fights like the big up and comers, and like if you get past Derek Lewis, you probably have a pretty good shot, and if you don't, like you get knocked out completely unconscious?
Probably somewhere in that range. I think they're just going to try and give him some fun fights. I think that's all they're really doing with Tai Tuivasa. Just make it fun. Hopefully somebody who's going to engage with him. Yeah.
Watching Tai Tuivasa after this loss just reminded me, I mean, any fight, any UFC fight, any MMA fight, I can look at this and be like, oh yeah, these guys are just a different breed of human than me.
Sure.
But Tai Tuivasa especially, he just got his block knocked off by one of the hardest hitters we've seen in a minute. And he gets up and he's like laughing, like, "Hey man, come here. Like, good job." Like,
he's built different,
God.
man. This is a guy who drinks beer out of people's shoes. So let's just understand he's not like you and I.
He also comes from that Mark Hunt camp originally, right?
Mark Hunt is like his legit hero.
So like that's again a different breed of human.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, obviously, we've talked about Orlando a lot. We've got a lot MMA wise and some gaming we want to get to. So let's wrap. I think we should wrap it up here and ask the question of, did the rest of the card, how did that fare against our expectations?
I think it was great. It was a great card. I do want to give some very brief flowers here to 3 additional names that I think pulled off some very standout performances.
Mm-hmm.
Angela Hill, amazing performance against Emily Ducati.
She looked great.
Another one of her best performances. We've said that about a few fighters on this card. Jonathan Pierce looked great against Darren Elkins. I think we all predicted he would.
Yeah.
And then the very first fight, Yasmin, they were saying Haragi as the way to pronounce her last name.
Haregi, I believe they said.
Haregi? Okay, so Yasmin Haregi. I thought she looked fantastic against Estela Nunes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that was just a great way to start that card. A solid finish from Haragi or Haregi.
It was just honestly, I thought it lived. I think I gave it a 4.5. I put it really high in terms of my expectations. I think it probably met that. I think 4.5 is pretty good. You had a lot of good finishes.
I would agree with you.
Yeah. It really entertained. Like this was a great card. I would love to see them do more of these, even if it's like once a month or once every other month, where they do like kind of a stacked fight night. And then I can live with the rest of them being maybe not so great, because then it's easier I have to cover it anyway. But if I wasn't, then I could say, maybe I'll just watch those ones. And then if I have time, I'll tune in for the other ones.
Speaking of very, very just complete stacked free fight night cards, UFC 282. What a good fight night card this is.
You and your backhanded compliments here. I think we're obviously already in the territory of asking, is it worth your $75? You seem to be thinking it is not.
I think with Prochazka Teixeira 2 at the top of this card, it would have been.
Yes. I think
but
that's
with
fair.
This, or even if it was
Blachowicz against Magomed Ankalaev for the vacant title, yeah.
Yeah, but if it was Teixeira Blachowicz 2, I think I'd be more compelled to watch that as the main event.
Sure.
Blachowicz versus Ankalaev, I don't know if that really does it for me. The rest of the main card is actually pretty good.
It's pretty solid, yeah.
But this is like, it's bottom heavy almost.
You're missing the hook.
Exactly. Like, I think this is a fight card that rather than dropping the $80 with tax and everything, I can probably just get caught up on this on social media. If there's any big finishes, somebody will tweet it out, and I'll be able to catch it before the UFC copyright people pull it down.
Well, I'm actually going to a wedding this weekend, so I don't even know how much of the live fight I'm going to be watching. But yeah, I can understand hesitancy here, because as much as I think Blachowicz and Ankalaev is actually going to be an interesting fight, and I think on the whole, this is probably a pay-per-view worthy card, I can understand why it's not for other people. Blachowicz and Ankalaev doesn't have, I guess, that sexiness, right?
Yeah. And
a lot of people aren't going to the bar, or they're not having a party to get Blachowicz and Ankalaev in, as far as that, the top fights and demand fights, and the supporting fights I think they're fun. I think they're really great, but it's not necessarily, you don't have a lot of big star names on here, unless you're a Darren Till guy. There's obviously people love Darren Till. Robbie Lawler, I mean, all respect to Robbie Lawler, but he's not really, he doesn't have the same star power he used to. He's definitely in the twilight of his career. Paddy Pimblett, people love that. That could be enough of a hook for people going against Jared Gordon. But yeah, I don't know. I could see this one being, if people are pay-per-viewed out. Let's say you're one of the lucky 7,000 people who bought the PFL pay-per-view.
Is that what the number was, or was that?
We don't know the number.
Okay, I didn't. I was just saying. I'm surprised.
No, I'm sorry. That's not a number. That's a made up number. But we did have, and take this for what it's worth. Chris Cyborg saying that she heard that it did less than 10,000 buys. Now,
I mean, I would not be surprised.
Take that for what it's worth. It is the word of a fighter who has not had good relations with the brass from this particular organization.
Correct.
Take it with the grain of salt. But does it sound that unbelievable?
No, I would believe that in a second.
But it lines up with history of pay-per-view, non-UFC pay-per-view as well. They do terribly. That's why I've looked at this as negatively from the beginning. I'm nothing against PFL, but I think pay-per-view is a mistake for pretty much anybody who's not the UFC.
Is it weird that this is not a UK pay-per-view, given that we have both Paddy Pimblett and Darren Till on it?
No, I mean, it's just the way it worked out.
It just seems like that this is a card that they would put on in London. Like, this is like, if they said,
if we were in a world
O2,
where they were traveling more, yeah.
And then also you have Jan at the top of it, a Polish fighter, obviously. So it's like, you think that, with this much European star power, and, at the top of that, even before that, it was Yuri Prohashka. So it's like we have all this European star power. I'm surprised this was not being held in a European arena, is all I'm saying.
I think it just worked out that way. They're not going all around the world yet. I mean, I think it sounds like next year that's what they're hoping to do. They're going to be in Brazil for the next pay-per-view, so that's kind of a start. It's not Europe, but it's international. We'll see what the next year brings. But yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, maybe they would have wanted to bring this one to Europe, but they couldn't really do that in the current climate.
You know what? I'm saying that the prelim card is pretty compelling, and I think that might satiate my bloodlust. And
I was wondering. I was actually going to ask you that. I was going to ask you if like could you get your violence out of your Saturday by just watching this really, I think, pretty solid prelim portion?
I mean, just starting, like, the early prelims currently are listed as Billy Quarantillo and Alexander Hernandez as the final fight of the early prelims, which
I like that.
That's
fight.
a good fight.
There's just
Chris
to
Curtis
highlight some names
Buckley
on this card. I mean, we got Owen St. Preux, you got Chris Curtis, Joaquin Buckley, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, Chris Dawkins, like you said, Quarantillo, Edmund Shabazian. These are all like really interesting, fun fighters and names that some of them are fighting each other even.
This is a prove it fight for Edmund Shabazian coming off of his recent fights against Dalcha Lungiambula. This is one of those things where, like, all right, if you lose to him, like, Lungiambula is a physical presence, but he's not a D1 wrestler.
This seems to be a fight that was booked to give Edmund Shabazian a chance to get a win. That's what it feels like, but also it's a dangerous fight too. So it's a good fight. Yeah, I like a lot of these fights, but when it really comes down to it, you're kind of looking at this pay-per-view, right? Because I think we already like the prelims here. The supporting fights, I think Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria, I think, is a fantastic fight. Someone's always got to go. We're talking about guys who are, legitimately, I feel like, in the top 10 at featherweight. You look at Tapology, they have Topuria listed at number 35 at lightweight, but he is also more like, he's really more of a featherweight. So I would like to see I think now he's going to be especially a featherweight. So I really like to see how he does against Bryce Mitchell here. I like this fight a lot. It was going to be the headliner for a fight night a few weeks back, but obviously they got pushed back.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I would love to see this fight, and I would not love to drop $75 on it. But like,
that's fair. I get it.
I mean,
but you could also, I don't remember what your situation is in terms of showtime and access to Bellator fights through Paramount Plus, but there's Bellator the night before.
I don't even know what the card is. I'll be honest.
No, it's a good one. This is the semifinals of the Bantamweight Grand Prix.
Okay.
I like
so we
this
got Rafion Stouts. I always say
Rafion
Rafion
Stouts and Danny Sabatello. They've been hyping the heck out of this fight because it's a bunch of people who love to talk. I honestly, this is a good Bellator card.
Magomedov versus Patchy Mix. That's a good fight.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the rematch of that, unfortunately stopped probably too early in my opinion, fight between Liz Carmouche, the now champion, and Juliana Velasquez, the dethroned champion, who I thought they probably should have given Velasquez the chance to fight through that one.
Yeah.
She was winning the fight.
It's a solid card. I also have obligations on Saturday night, so it's like, all right, I'm not gonna cry too much if I can't watch.
Well, Bellator Friday.
Well, no, I mean I'm talking about like if we're talking about like which ones are we gonna watch here?
Sure.
Like I am not gonna be too brokenhearted. I'll probably monitor on Twitter and just be like, all right, oh, cool, so and so beat so and so. All right, here's the quick highlight before the UFC takes down the finish video.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Why would they want to promote any of their fighters?
I know, right? I think we have a good weekend of fights here. I think between the two events we do. But yeah, it really comes down to how much do you really want to spend your 75? You're saying no. I think if it was me, I would spend my 75 for it.
I would love to if there was one more fight. Like if Prochazka Teixeira didn't fall apart, which we're wishing.
Well, sure. Prochazka. Obviously, it's a banger of a card as it was looking. They lose the top fight. Yeah, it's tough, but I still think this is a legitimate. And don't forget, this is for the actual championship now. Like I know everyone's still probably going to look at Yuri as the champion, but he did willingly give up. Well, he says willingly gave up the belt. Yeah. He is allowing the division to move forward without him. This isn't even an interim fight. This is the belt that when Yuri comes back, he's going to have to win.
I'm also just a little sour that Glover got screwed out of the
I don't
shot
love that
here.
Either. No, I can actually understand.
Because like him saying, all right, I would have fought Jan Blachowicz on this card because he's already prepared for Jan Blachowicz.
Sure.
But he was like, if you want me to fight Magomed Ankalaev, can you just give me a few more weeks? I need to completely change my game plan and like my training for that. And they're like, oh, okay, so it's now Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. It's like, that sucks.
The UFC, it kind of amazes me that fighters continue to bend over backwards to defend the UFC, and then they get themselves in these situations where they find the UFC is not their friend whatsoever. The UFC only looks out for themselves. And then it's just like, what the heck? And I don't think Glover's going crazy like with like anti-UFC rhetoric or anything like that, but you can tell he's exasperated with the situation.
He was speaking out against them. He was not like, oh no, the UFC did what's right for them. Like he was frustrated. You could tell.
He was frustrated, but I think he was frustrated to the point that makes sense, as opposed to even from the UFC standpoint. They could be like, all right, I get it. He's mad. Whatever, we'll move on.
Yeah, it's
unfortunate, but that's they hold all the cards, and they're not working with you. You're working with them.
Yeah. I want, I don't know what the extent of Yuri Prochazka's injury is.
They're saying at least a year.
Dana seems to think it's going to be 18 months. Yuri
Dana's a doctor. Did you know that he's a doctor, by the way?
I mean, he's right there with Joe Rogan in terms of diagnoses.
Yep.
But with Yuri, he's like saying like 6 months or something like that. So it's like, all right, well, the truth's got to be somewhere in the middle there. But also, I would never underestimate Yuri Prochazka in any circumstance, I think, because he has shown just to be a freak, but also shoulder injuries are no joke.
No, they're not. And, I would imagine caution's probably the way to go. My bet is that whoever wins this fight, whether it be Blachowicz or Ankalaev, is going to end up fighting Glover Teixeira sometime in the spring.
I would bet maybe, too.
Maybe by June or something like that. That's my guess. And that they would probably shoot for Yuri to come back, in the fall, late fall kind of situation. Maybe even in New York. Who knows?
Yeah, I still just it's a bummer that
it's a super bummer.
We couldn't have
very
Glover
disappointing, and it happened so recently to the fight card too. So
yeah, so
I mean, Jan was literally in the air over the Atlantic when everything happens. He lands in Vegas.
That's right.
He always gets into Vegas a couple weeks early from because obviously he's from Poland. He does most of his camp out there, and then he comes out here to acclimate. That's typical of him. And his phone's blowing up, and his wife, his fiance, who is also his manager, like essentially just accepted everything. And while he was in the air, is like, yeah, we'll do it. That's fine.
He's got that legendary Polish power, but it's got to recharge. He's got to get there, and the Polish power doesn't work if he doesn't sleep on the right time zone.
That's true. He said he was gaming when he was on the flight too. He likes to play games.
Did he say what game?
I forget, actually. Yes, he did. I have to double check, but I don't know what.
It's just always The Witcher 3. He's just always playing The Witcher 3. That's all he plays.
No. Although he sounds like he's very interested in the Witcher remake. They're going to do the original game.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that too. I never played The Witcher 1 because it's just a PC-only game. It hasn't aged very well. The fact that they're remaking it as an open-world modern game makes me so excited. I'm hoping they do that for The Witcher 2, even though The Witcher 2 does not need it quite as badly. but I've tried playing Witcher 2, and it's still it's like after playing Witcher 3, it's tough to go back to.
No, I'd imagine so. We definitely want to. We had a lot to talk about, right? Last week, this week. But one thing that happened in between that had nothing to do with the actual recent events in the cage. Big UFC story here.
Yes.
Monster MMA story in that, James Krause has become such a persona non grata in the UFC, in MMA, that, the Ontario, the province of Ontario, the province of Alberta, both are not allowing wagers on the UFC anymore because of this ongoing betting scandal.
Yeah, so that's been when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is not a thing that the UFC can like try to sweep under the rug, really.
Nope, it's past there.
Because like for a while, Dana was kind of like downplaying it. Like when people would ask him about it, he's like,
Sure.
"Oh yeah, I don't think anything's going to come of it." And then that happened, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to start seeing some actions being taken," because once it starts affecting the UFC's bottom line, that's when they start caring about things all of a sudden.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the betting is a little different because the betting, works through the provinces in this case, or the states if it was in the United States. So far, the only thing that's really happened in the United States at the commission level or at the state level is in New Jersey, my state. You cannot place wagers on. They will not take wagers on fights involving James Krause or James Krause fighters, which sounds like it may not be. It's kind of taking care of itself in that sense. That's what the UFC did just on Friday night in outlining that, basically he is not, anyone who's affiliated with him is not allowed to fight for the UFC anymore.
Yeah, which is tough because one of the next title fights that we have is Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, who Brandon Moreno recently started training with James Krause.
At some point this year, I know they got started. It's an unfortunate situation for all these fighters involved. I don't feel bad for James Krause. He was doing something that was not smart and very shady, and is now reaping what he sowed.
Yeah.
Having said that,
it's
the
tough.
UFC had to be aware of this. Like, they can't plead ignorance. He goes on Ariel's show and is talking about all the betting he would do. It's like, we know where it is. No, I don't think Ariel is well liked in the UFC, at least by certain people. I'm sure a lot of the people don't mind him at all, but they have to be aware of what's happening here. And for a long time, they just kind of tolerated it because it didn't come back to bite them. He had a place on one of the betting shows.
Yeah.
They were totally okay with this up until the point where they realized, oh, wait, maybe there's something going on that's not so good, and that can actually affect our ability to have wagers placed on our fights, which is a lot of the interest that we get.
And also they have betting partners. DraftKings has a clock outside of the octagon on every side of the octagon. Well, they got a bunch of clocks,
yeah.
So it's definitely going to affect the bottom line, because if suddenly you can't place any bets on the UFC fights, I bet your betting partner is not going to be happy about that, and then that'll ultimately affect your bottom line.
And this is not meant to be disrespect to Canada. This is more just an observation about the way Americans think. I feel like if this was happening in not Ontario, which, by the way, is a massive province which has more people in it than New Jersey, and a lot of states in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was happening in a state as opposed to a Canadian province, it would be a bigger story in the United States as well. And I feel like it still hasn't quite reached the heights that it could.
I think that's what the UFC was trying to do, right? By like making it so no fighters affiliated with him could fight in the UFC for at least the current period, right? They're trying to get ahead of this now
they're being much more proactive than they were. I think before they were being a little more reactive. Now they're attempting to be proactive and getting out ahead so that you don't have a state like New Jersey, which could potentially be the first one of those states that would actually do something. I don't know that it'll get to that point or not. We're just speculating here. I don't have any sources necessarily that I've spoken to about this type of thing, but I know I have colleagues that are working on this story to find out. Some people who are involved more in betting than myself, and to kind of get the read of the situation here. But it's a big deal. This is a big problem. This is one of the biggest stories in MMA in a long time that has nothing to do with the actual fighting itself. I'm curious to see what changes this leads to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that it's going to be no fighter or coach can be involved in like any kind of betting stuff, because like the betting, the embracing of sports betting has become something that's just an unstoppable avalanche in all sports at this point.
And it was always going to, like, the moment it was legal, like the Supreme Court sided with New Jersey in the case, you knew it was just the floodgates were about to open.
Oh, absolutely. But like, think about like Pete Rose. He is still not in the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest batters to ever play in baseball. And he can't be in the Hall of Fame because he bet on a game while he was one of the managers, I think, of the Cincinnati Reds.
Yes.
And to this day, he's not allowed to be in the Hall of Fame because he was betting while he was a manager.
And also, there are additional factors that have made it even harder for Pete Rose in particular, such as the statutory rape allegations and all these things. So he's not. It's only gotten worse for him.
I mean, that's a hard thing to like him, but sure. as a baseball player, you know, this is something that he probably should be in the Hall of Fame, very obviously, especially given our approach to betting as it exists today. Like,
sure.
However, if you are a coach, and again, like, this is all being investigated, it's all like not even allegations, it's all suspicions at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a coach and your fighter is injured and you happen to be heavily involved with the betting scene, and then suddenly a line swings so dramatically like it did with Derek Minner, obviously people are going to start looking at you like, what did you do? Like, obviously you told somebody, you let somebody know. Like, there's going to be some people kind of thinking like, oh, well, obviously it was that guy. Whether they're right or wrong is a different point altogether. But you got to understand, you're playing with fire. If you're that heavily involved and something like this happens, you're going to be the first suspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, I like James Krause as a coach a lot. I think he's an incredible mind for...
I thought he was doing really good things with fighters, and I thought he was a pretty talented fighter himself.
Yeah. However, he's had a bad year. He has had a very bad year between this and the Megan Anderson tweet thread. If you looked into that at all a couple months ago,
I don't want to go deep into that because
I'm not.
Kind of, you know, there's some he said, she said,
but that probably was not a good week for him when that happened. I'm just saying it's been not a great year for James Krause, especially second half.
James Krause's career is basically over.
Yeah,
his livelihood is basically gone. So, like, you're deeply underselling how bad this year is for him. This is a catastrophic life year for James Krause. He's going to have to reevaluate what he can do in his life now.
Yeah, it's again, it's a shame. Like, I know that some of it, if it ends up being that he was the one that was involved in any wrongdoing, I mean, who knows? In 3 months, he might be reinstated and they'll be like, we investigated it. We saw like there was no wrongdoing on his part. He's back. All of his fighters are welcomed back. But like, this is just, it's a shame that like such a great mind in MMA is no longer allowed to coach fighters in the UFC, because he was doing some great stuff for some really good fighters.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but also you reap what you sow, you know?
Yeah.
He the decisions he made were poor, and here he is.
It's possible to be on both sides of that fence.
I suppose. Look, I'm not saying I've never made mistakes in life, but I mean, it never sounded good when you're an active coach giving betting advice.
Yeah.
It never made sense to me. I thought it was a little weird. But like, by the very nature of this sport, it's hard for a conversation to dwell on anything for too long. And we don't really get to dissect these things until they get too big. And I think that's the really unfortunate part, because it's just on to the next fights. So
yeah, he, again, like he's been very outspoken about being a part of the betting community. And that's ultimately going to be a weird situation that's going to have some morally gray areas if you are betting. And he has admitted, I believe, on Ariel's show, that he bets on fighters that he coaches.
That's what I'm saying. This is like, I don't watch Ariel's show. most of the time, to be perfectly honest. I just have a lot of like if there's a
lot of content to digest.
Usually if there's a fighter that I'm going to be speaking to that particular week and they were on Ariel's show, I will watch that so that I don't just ask the same questions, or that maybe I can
there's a follow-up or something you can ask.
Do a follow-up or something like that. The idea being I'm not going to just rehash everything because like you already watched Ariel, why are you going to read my thing then? So that's typically when I watch. And to be fair, Ariel does a great job. It has nothing to do with Ariel. It's just I've got other things that I can do typically. But yeah, he has a 4-hour show on Monday. He has another deep show on Wednesday. I forget how much content he makes a week. If you don't watch every single minute of it, it's hard to keep up. And like if they don't write a story off it, if fighting doesn't write a story off of something, a lot of stuff's just going to get slipped through the cracks.
For sure. Yeah, but this is just a bad situation all around. The UFC's not happy. Obviously, James Krause is not happy.
The situation's far from done.
We're still learning more stuff seemingly every day at this point. And
good reporting though from guys like Ariel and Aaron Bronstetter and Mark Ramundi. They're keeping their ears to the ground and reporting things as they come. So shout outs to them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, especially if any like U.S. commissions start stepping
exactly.
in.
I feel like that's the other shoe. Like if that drops, it's going to be a massive problem. I think if they can stem it here, then the UFC will have avoided the worst of it. But I mean, they can't just slap a Band-Aid on this. They're going to have to find a solution.
Yeah, there's going to be a change in policy. But I think that's all we need to talk about for the fighting side.
Yeah, I'm tapped out on the fight side. I want to talk a little gaming before we wrap up here.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of stuff to talk gaming. Like this week, like I mentioned, is going to be a big week for gaming. We've got the Game Awards coming up on Thursday night. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of reveals coming out of that. Like Jeff Keighley.
I signed up for something from Valve or I guess with Steam. They're doing every minute they're giving away.
Oh, a Steam Deck. That's right.
Steam Deck. So I signed up for that. I'm like, let's give it a shot. Why not?
So I'm bummed. I was supposed to be here in person at the Game Awards. That has fallen through. So I am going to be covering it from afar.
Okay.
But yeah, I was there last year. It's a really great show. Jeff Keighley does an incredible job.
I remember you went last year, yeah.
And this year I was supposed to be there, but I'm going to be watching it with the rest of us, with the rest of everybody. But there's a lot of reveals and he's saying that this is as good as he's ever felt about a show that he's put on. And, obviously he's always going to hype up his show, just like Dana White. He's always going to be like, and Jeff Keighley's obviously not Dana White, but when you're promoting something, you're always going to be like saying, like, hey, this is like a really great show. You be sure to tune in. I think that, I take Jeff at his word that he probably has a lot of really great reveals. And it's going to be something worth tuning in for if you want to get caught up on there's going to be some awards given out. There's going to be some performances that happen, like musical performances. But the core that I think most people tune in for are the world premieres, the trailers, the announcements. I mean, we've gotten so many big announcements in the past. Last year, Nintendo was a complete no-show at the Game Awards in terms of reveals. But traditionally, that 1 year we got our first look at Breath of the Wild gameplay at the Game Awards. So there's the potential for some serious announcements, some serious reveals to happen with all the games that have either been delayed into 2023 or kind of the unclear picture that we have of 2023 at this point. I would not be surprised we got some just extremely massive announcements. And we're going to talk about that more in depth next week.
Yeah, well, we can go over what actually comes of it. But one thing I want to ask you is, because I haven't played as many of these games as I would have hoped, Game of the Year. There are 6 nominees: Stray, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, and God of War Ragnarok. Of those, I've only played God of War Ragnarok. What is your prediction? Not your choice, but what's your prediction for what's going to win Game of the Year?
I would be shocked if it's not Elden Ring.
Okay. Yeah,
it's not my game of the year. I'm not a From Software guy, but just the way the narrative has been this year, where everybody is just on the Elden Ring train, I would be very surprised if it does not take home the highest honor tomorrow night, Thursday night.
Who's the upset pick?
I mean, the upset of all upsets would be Stray. I don't know how Stray's on that list, to be honest, but
right. But let's say if there's a dark horse to win. What's the dark horse? What's going to win if it's not Elden Ring?
Either God of War or the realistic upset of all upsets would be Xenoblade. But I don't think either of those.
But you think? And do you think Xenoblade could conceivably win?
I think there's a maybe like a 3% chance Xenoblade wins. I think here's how I lay out the odds. All right, 90%. I'm saying Elden Ring. Okay. 7% God of War. 3% Xenoblade.
Okay, and then the rest are just happy to be there.
I think the rest are filling out the top 6.
Gotcha.
Which I think 3 of those games do not belong on the top 6. I think, I mean, again, I haven't played Xenoblade, but I don't think, I think that maybe doesn't belong on that list, but Stray and Plague Tale, from what I understand, I think there are other games that could have been on there.
Okay. What would you say should be subbed into that?
Personally, I would want Pokemon Legends. I think it's weird that we don't have like Pokemon Legends Arceus on there.
Okay.
Like Xenoblade is kind of the Nintendo representative, which I don't know how I feel about that. Like I know a lot of people.
Do you feel like it's like a token thing that they just gave them one, or?
No, I think that a lot of people really do love Xenoblade Chronicles. I just don't know. Maybe it's just not my cup of tea. I think that. Let me look at my list here.
See, I've never played any Xenoblade games, so I'm not really as familiar.
I mean, I guess like a Stray just catches me off guard as its inclusion. Like it's maybe one of those things where it's like, all right, we want like a kind of a non-stressful game to be on there because like the game is like you're wandering around a kind of a cyberpunk city as a cat.
Mm-hmm. And it's an indie game. It's from Annapurna.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess Legends Arceus. Like there's some very. This might be a top heavy year for the industry.
Sure.
Where, like,
I mean, not every year is going to give you a banger.
Like God of War and Elden Ring seem like they're so far ahead of the pack.
Right.
But Xenoblade has a very dedicated fan base, so I could imagine a world where that pulls off the upset.
Okay.
But I don't know. Plague Tale and Stray seem like the outliers for me on that list. Horizon, again, it's a great series. That game is super good from all indications. I don't think it's gonna win, but stranger things have happened.
Well, you know me. I'll be pulling for God of War Ragnarok.
Of course.
But I guess we'll see what comes of that. And I mean, do you have any other? You want to make like a bold prediction for the Game Award, like a reveal? Obviously, you can't pull anything out of the air, but like, let's say something that we already know is in existence that could show up.
I think Nintendo will come back to show Tears of the Kingdom and give us like maybe not a trailer. Maybe I don't think they're going to do a live gameplay demo. I think that we're going to get new footage of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Okay. That's not really a bold prediction. I guess it could be a bold prediction seeing as how they didn't appear on the show at all last year. Like they had like an indie ad that they posted and that was it. Like, I don't know. Like it's so hard to guess because like last year we got like the developers of Heavy Rain revealed a Star Wars game that they're making. It's like, I would have never guessed that was going to happen. And like, there's so many games that just like, really, that's happening? And it's hard to predict anything. Maybe bold prediction. I'm going to say Beyond Good and Evil 2 has some sort of announcement.
I'm going to make a bold prediction, and it's probably very bold, but we're going to see something out of the IO Interactive James Bond game.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a very good prediction.
I like to will things into existence too, so
that would be fun.
We'll
see.
I feel like that's like an out there one that like, hey, you never know. Maybe we'll get like the flashing across the screen. So that would be my hope, but we'll see.
I don't know. I think almost maybe GoldenEye 007, the 64, the N64 thing, because we know that they're coming to both Switch and Xbox. Do we think that they get just like instantly released onto their respective stores during the Game Awards? They do that sometimes where like they'll show a trailer and they'll be like, available now.
I thought I remember them saying something about next year.
So do I.
Still the plan, but I mean, shoot, that would be a wonderful surprise. I'd be okay with that.
And another one, Sports Story. Did you ever play Golf Story on Switch?
No, but I remember it.
So it's like, like a kind of like a pixel art golf RPG where it's like, there's actually like a story. You're walking around a big world and like
very typical game.
the combat system is basically like you golf. Like instead of taking place in like turn-based combat, you do like golf battles basically. They're doing one called Sports Story. They announced a release month. I mean, it was announced like 3 years ago, I think, and it's been completely silent. At the last Nintendo Indie World presentation, they announced that it is coming out in December, but they didn't give us a date. I think it's going to be like a surprise launch during the Game Awards. That's like kind of like a lukewarm prediction.
A lukewarm prediction. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me like a cold prediction.
Oh God. Elden Ring wins Game of the Year.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, now, but and yeah, we'll of course talk about the awards next week. You mentioned you have some games that you've been playing that you can talk about. Before we get to that entirely, I just wanted to highlight that I finally beat Bowser's Fury, and that I'm very close to getting all of the cat shines that you have to collect. I'm pretty sure there's 100, and I'm at 93. My kids are having a lot of fun watching me collect these. They're like, you got to get it before it rains. Don't want Bowser to come. They're having a blast. And I'm already through the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy in Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga. So I took a break because I've been watching Andor.
Yeah, I'm also almost caught up on Andor. How many episodes are there?
There's 12. I believe there's 12.
Okay, I'm on 11 right now. I'm about to watch 11.
I just watched 11 last night. So
I had just fallen so far behind in all these shows and everything. Like I still haven't watched House of Dragon. There's a lot of content.
Yeah. Did you see that there were deals on like 3-month subscriptions for HBO Max?
I would imagine it's just going to be for new subscribers. I'm a previous subscriber.
Okay.
A lot of those deals are usually only for new subscribers, which
I will
sucks.
tell you one thing though. Because I don't do this anymore now, I get my Hulu through my parents because they get it through Verizon. But what my wife and I would do every Black Friday is either my email or her email every other year. We'd alternate because one of us would still have an active subscription. You were able to access it was either for $1 or $2 a month for Hulu. So as long as you didn't have an active subscription, you were able to access it.
Well, I have Hulu through the Disney bundle, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's neither here nor there for that one. But my point is, maybe
sometimes
you had
there's
access
deals
that way, you know?
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. But yeah, I've been playing some new games.
Yeah, let's hear them.
So there's Sports Story that I talked about. That's the sequel to Golf Story from the same developer. There's another game that came out last year called Soccer Story.
Okay.
Not from the same developer, not a part of the same series, but I guess they realized, and they even said, we were inspired by Golf Story.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, well, that's kind of weird that the developers have one called Sports Story. You're putting out Soccer Story, and it's not related to Golf Story, but Sports Story is related to Golf Story. It's very confusing.
I'm sure they found a way to not get themselves in a legal hot water.
I'm sure there was something where, like, you can't trademark Story and you can't trademark Soccer. I mean, It's one of those names that it's, like, hard to imagine. I don't know. But, like, it's very surprising because, like, if you told me, hey, this is the new game from the Golf Story developers, I would believe you.
Okay.
It plays out very much the same where you're walking around like an overworld, and instead of taking part in battles, you're playing soccer. And like everything you do in the world revolves around soccer. So like you're helping out people, and it's like, all right, I need to set up these trash cans around town. Like that's my job, and I'll join your team if you can help me out with that. And how do you set the trash cans up? You don't go up and pull them up. You kick the ball into them to set them upright. Or like there's targets around the city, and if you kick the ball into them, you get coins. And
can I tell you, I'm just picturing MMA Story as you're talking.
Oh my God, MMA Story would be so fun, dude. Like that would be so much fun. I want MMA Story more than anything now. Like almost as much as our like Street Fighter inspired MMA game that we pitched a couple months back. I want that number one, but number two is MMA Story.
There you go.
And God, that would be so much fun.
I've changed your life, I think.
But Soccer Story so far is a really good time, and I recommend it. Like if you liked Golf Story, or if you like kind of like the old school soccer style of games, like they play off that really well. It's very simplistic once you're in the actual matches, and the story is fun and absurd in all the right ways. Like you live in a world where like soccer is banned, aside from like this, like the government issued soccer, basically. Like the government runs a soccer organization, and any other type of soccer is banned. And it's you're trying to put together like a team in this world of like banned soccer. And it's just a fun, interesting take on the sports genre in like an RPG format.
I would guess this game is probably like reasonably affordable by comparison to some of the
$20,
other titles.
$25, something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's 20 now that I think of it. Two other games that I've been playing: Need for Speed Unbound.
What's Need for Speed? Never heard of this.
It's a racing franchise,
as you
might imagine by the name. So I'm having a really good time with it. It's like more of like the open world style, which I like for racing games. It's not, I would say that the open world is not anywhere near like Forza Horizon 5's rendition of Mexico, which I think is one of the best racing games of all time, if not the best racing game of all time.
Is it in a real setting?
I think it's a heavily inspired by Chicago fictional setting. It's at a town or a city called Lakeshore. And I believe, like, I've looked on several occasions, I've been like, this reminds me of Chicago. And then I look up and there's like a building that looks a lot like the Willis Tower, formerly Sears Tower. And it's really fun. Like, the activities are great. It's smart in the way that, like, I can't just go into the story mode and win every race. Like, most of the races I don't win, I would say. But like, you're slowly amassing money. I've been playing a good amount, and I still feel like I'm pretty early on in this career mode or the story mode. So I'm reviewing it for Game Informer. Hopefully, it's if I ever get like progress. I feel like I'm not making any progress in this game, but we'll see how it goes in terms of this. But so far, I'm really liking it, and I think that it's worthwhile. It's the most fun I've had with a Need for Speed game in a long time. I kind of fell off.
I was never a big Need for Speed guy.
I like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the old Hot Pursuit games, and I really like the Need for Speed Underground games.
I was going to ask you about Underground, because that seemed like the one that would have been most up my alley, but I kind of sided with Midnight Club.
This feels like the combination of Hot Pursuit and Underground, so I'm really enjoying it in that regard, and then set in an open world, which I guess was Underground. It's been so long since I played Need for Speed Underground. I think Underground had like an open world component where you could drive around.
I thought it did, but again, I didn't play that one.
It's been so long since I played that, dude. Like, I might be confusing with other games, but
yeah,
I loved Underground. I loved Hot Pursuit. This feels like a kind of a combination of those in like a modern infrastructure, and I like it so far. I'm enjoying it. Another game I've been playing, the final game that I have been checking out, is Marvel's Midnight Suns.
Yes, we've been talking about this one for a while.
Yeah, so this is a turn-based strategy RPG from the makers of XCOM. So you know that they know how to make a turn-based strategy game, and it's starring Marvel characters, and it's set in like kind of like the supernatural side of the Marvel universe. So like, yes, you do have your Iron Mans, yes, you have your Doctor Strange and your Captain America and your Wolverine and everybody. But you also have a lot of like lesser known supernatural characters. And some of the supernatural characters are more well known, like the Ghost Riders and Blades. But there's like Magic, who's a member of the X-Men. There's Nico Minoru, who is one of the Runaways. And there's a lot of characters that like aren't household names. And it's kind of cool to see them get their starring roles alongside characters like Captain Marvel and Captain America. So I'm really liking it so far. I'm about 4 hours in, and it's turn-based strategic combat when you're in combat, and like it's like a card system. So like every character has like a set of cards, and when it comes around to like you can play a certain amount of cards, a certain amount of actions per turn, and it's like, all right, in my hand I have like these 5 attacks that I could do. This one requires that like I have some level of heroism, which is built up through doing more basic attacks. So like you can't just go in and just like instantly use Iron Man's Unibeam, which is his most powerful attack, just over and over and over again. You know, you have to like build up to that and like do like more basic attacks in order to generate this heroism, which is kind of like a shared pool of like special attack resource. And then other ways, like, you know, if you have like a move that is billed as quick, like it's an attribute that a move can have. If you knock out an enemy with a quick attack, it does not use one of your turns. So like, if you're like, all right, well, Blade has this slashing attack that's marked as quick. If you see somebody who's low on health and you use it on them and you end up knocking them out with that attack, you don't use up one of your turns. So you have to start thinking really strategically about, all right, here are the attacks I have. If I use this attack and it knocks him out, I'll still have 2 turns left on this turn, or 2 moves left on this turn. And then that'll also generate heroism. And also something that's cool is they have minions that are in the match, and they're just one-hit KO, basically, because they want you to feel like, all right, you are a superhero.
You still should be able to beat them, yeah.
You should be able to beat these guys pretty handily. But also other ones are like powered up, because like the whole backdrop of the story and the reason why it's supernatural is that Hydra has set free Lilith, who is the mother of demons, and she is attempting to use the Darkhold to like resurrect this ancient evil. And it's all very supernatural. So like, Scarlet Witch is in the story and everything. Right. So like, but like also like she's gone through and corrupted all the villains of the world essentially. So like your first boss battle is against this corrupted version of Venom. And it's cool to see that. And of course, that also tells you that Spider-Man's in the story. But
not necessarily, but now you did.
Well, I mean, it's also been in marketing.
I'm teasing.
And also, if you've played the Spider-Man game, they got the same voice actor, Yuri Lowenthal, to voice Spider-Man in this game, which is cool because the voice actor they got for Marvel's Avengers felt a little jarring because he was so different from the other versions we've had. But
I would not have predicted we were talking about two different Yuris on this show, by the way.
Oh, that's very true. With outside of the combat, so the combat's very good. Obviously, like the team at Firaxis, who makes this game, knows how to make a turn-based strategy game. This part that's interesting to me is there's a whole social aspect to it outside of the combat. So in between every combat or every battle, you go back to the Abbey, which is like this mansion that exists between dimensions, because that's the only place they can hide from this demonic mother figure who is just ravaging like your dimension.
Sure.
So you go back to the Abbey, and that's like, you play as like kind of a created character called the Hunter. And right. She's Lilith's daughter or son, depending on which gender. I chose female, but like it's the offspring of Lilith. And in the past, this character has defeated Lilith, and that's why she was sealed away. But the Hunter died in that battle. So using all the supernatural characters, they resurrect the Hunter, and then you create what you want the Hunter to look like. But you're going around and, you can interact with other characters. So like you can sit down with Ghost Rider and play video games if you want, or you can watch movies with Nico Minoru, or you can train with Captain Marvel. You can go visit Iron Man or Doctor Strange if you want to either like craft new equipment for your characters or enchant armor with like other like abilities. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do in terms of like the social simulation, and it's fun to do that. But also like I kind of sometimes just want to get into the battles, but it's also cool like the number of characters that you encounter over the course of your playthrough. It almost reminds me of Ultimate Alliance in that regard, where it's like, what character is going to pop up next? And you're like, oh, it's that character. That's awesome.
Well, I always liked Ultimate Alliance and X-Men Legends too.
Yes.
The precursor.
But, very different gameplay, but it's in that same way where you in between every battle, you go back to like a base, then you walk around, talk to characters, and then you go in and like every mission, you're like, all right, what villain's going to pop up this time? And it's always a cool surprise when like, holy crap, I can't believe they got so-and-so to be the final boss of this level. And so I'm enjoying it so far. Our reviewer, who has played a lot more of it than I am, he has said it is a long game, but he beat it. He gave it, I believe, an 8.5 out of 10. So it's a very solid strategy game. And I'm also a big Marvel fan, so I am all about it as well.
Okay.
So right on. I think that's all we have on the gaming side. Like I said, this week is going to be a big week for gaming news. So next week, I'm sure we'll have a larger gaming segment on this show. But
yeah, I would think so. We'll be able to talk. I mean, again, I haven't played a whole lot of the games that are really even up for awards this year because I'm still like a little behind. I was playing games this year that had come out in previous years. So, for me, it was like God of War is up for a lot of awards. I'm cheering for them. I thought it was just a fantastic game. I know Shredder's Revenge is up for multiplayer game of the year, so I'll be rooting for that. I don't know if it has a chance. I don't care. Go Turtles.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if for nothing else, watch it for the reveals because they always pull out all the stops. Like this is basically like an E3 stream in the middle of December.
There you go.
And of course, like if you haven't played a whole lot of games such as yourself this year, this is a good way to be like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to these games because they took home a lot of awards. So it also is a way to help kind of like be like narrowing down the games you should catch up on.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think we got everything we needed to, everything we wanted to cover in this show. Packed show. Probably going to be another one next week, but that's it for this one. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian Touche and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you want to reach us in a more formal capacity, there is always groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com and at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.